All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and I'm going to get started. My presentation is going to be about something called ludonarrative dissonance. Now, you might be wondering what the hell am I talking about? Did I make this up? Uh, Ludo is a board game. Why would it have narrative? And well, I'm here to explain what this is, where this term came from, and what does it mean for people who are interested in game dev. So let me just explain what the definition is. So Ludo uh, is, I think in Latin, it means I play, and dissonance is obviously like some sort of disagreement. So Ludo narrative dissonance can be described as some kind of conflict or disagreement between a video game's narrative told through non-interactive elements such as cutscenes or dialogues, and interactive elements such as the gameplay. Where did this term come from? Well, it came from this guy, Clint Hawking, who I believe works at Ubisoft Montreal, who made a blog post about it was basically a critique of Bioshock. Um, his point was that Bioshock was is a game that is itself a criticism of a philosophy called objectivism, which is basically it's a philosophy where it's a philosophy about how uh there's like a rational reason for you to like invest in yourself, and the game sort of has this element where you can interact with these things called little sisters, and you have the choice of either harvesting them or you have the choice of not harvesting them. And harvesting them gives you resources that you can spend to upgrade your character, while not harvesting them doesn't give you like any sort of guaranteed reward immediately. And according to Clint Hawking, this actually is in line with the themes of the game because it's about it's about objectivism, it's about power, and it's about freedom. However, according to Hawking, this he doesn't believe that the same themes are present throughout the game's actual story. Um, he believes that you have this sort of choice in the game's gameplay, but he doesn't think that there's something similar in the game's actual narrative, which I don't really agree with this criticism of Bioshock. I think it's interesting though, but people a lot of people read this blog post and they kind of took this term of ludonarrative dissonance from it, and it started to become really common amongst video game criticism. So I'm gonna go through some examples of really um, really common really common ways people have used the term ludonarrative dissonance, mostly to criticize video games. So the most common example that I've seen specifically is about the game Uncharted. And this point here is about how a main character in an action game, it doesn't make sense for them to be killing enemies or killing a lot of enemies. And this is like really common for for Uncharted, even so that there is actually a trophy in Uncharted 4 where if you kill 1,000 enemies, you do get a trophy called Little Narrative Dissonance. So it's kind of interesting that the developers did that. But basically the point here is that a character such as Nathan Drake will in an action game will kill many enemies, and I guess people are saying that wait, does it really make sense for like is like the way he's portrayed in cutscenes and dialogues, does it really make sense for this character to be killing that many people? And I guess this does raise some interesting questions. This specific example, it's is like should there if a character in an action game doesn't seem like they would be killing enemies, should there be some kind of consequence for doing so? Should killing enemies make the game harder? Should there be multiple routes or something? Um, in action, or you can just have it so that in an action game, the character and setting this makes sense for the killing enemies just makes sense that there is no dissonance involved at all. That's also another option that you can take here. But yeah, this is like one of the most common examples that people often cite for the narrative dissonance, specifically the game Uncharted. And this is where the there is a main story that is very urgent, such as The Witcher 3, you have to find Ciri. Many games like Skyrim have this world ending threat that you have to face. Um, Cyberpunk, you're dying, and I think someone even tells you you have like almost 2 weeks left to live. But the nature of the game itself is encouraging players to do side quests, to explore, to take their time, and to put off the main story, even though the main story requires you to, like, in the narrative, it requires you to uh, be urgent and solve the problem as quick as possible. So this is really common amongst almost like any type of like open world game you play will encounter this problem. And this does raise some questions on how we can deal with this. There's uh there's different ways you can do so. It's maybe some objectives can be timed, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good solution. I know a lot of people wouldn't. I think a lot of players will be annoyed if objectives in games have a timer. Also, side quests. There is like a there is like a discussion to be had about side quest placement and maybe having side quests in certain areas that are not that don't have like placing side quests in certain areas that aren't necessarily uh have other larger story beats close to them. Just having them in more calmer locations is one other way you can deal with this. But this is like honestly, this is like a really common thing just with these types of games that there's like I guess there's more work to be done to address this. The Here's another example that I just see frequently in JRPGs is when you win a fight but you lose in a cutscene, and this happens because JRPGs, or I guess it's not exclusive to JRPGs, but it's when you're fighting a character that is recurring. So maybe earlier on in the story you're not strong enough to beat them, but you still the game still wants you to fight them. But even if you one shot them, it doesn't really matter. There's going to be a cutscene that plays where you're just you get defeated in the cutscene. Um, and I want to bring up Xenoblade here because like the first two Xenoblade games like handle this differently. The first Xenoblade game, whenever there's a scripted loss, they don't actually deplete the health bar of the enemy you're fighting all the way down. The fight will stop at maybe like 50%. Like it will take away 50% of the enemy's health bar and then play the cutscene. Um, I think that's better than just fully depleting the health bar because it signifies that, well, they're not defeated if you didn't completely erase their health bar, but it can still be a bit jarring to see that. I think there's like if you want to have a recurring enemy in a game, I think you there are ways to make it seem uh to make the like defeating them into a process that's better. There's like the way you can convey with animations maybe to signify that maybe they're not being hurt that much or something because just like this one especially is just like really jarring to see, like especially when they look like they have been defeated within the animations of the fight, and just to like have a cutscene to play that actually just completely goes against what you just did. So this is definitely something uh that to keep in mind if if you ever want to have an enemy that's like recurring in the video game. And all of these are like what I just mentioned were common examples of ludonarrative dissonance that people point out for criticizing video games. But honestly, like when this term became very common amongst video game critics, there was some sort of pushback against it. It's kind of like there's a lot of there's a couple of points here. One is that for some people, ludonarrative dissonance is like unavoidable, and it people don't consider it really criticism at all. They just like, oh, that's just the way games are. It's like it's an observation. It's not really criticism. Uh, and another point here is that critics are not even using this term properly. Like if you remember, originally the blog post about Bioshock, like it was talking about the themes and the philosophy of the game and like going into depth about that kind of stuff. And now we have this critique of Uncharted feels like pretty removed from that, even though I don't think it's like I think you can still argue that it's still within definition of the narrative dissonance, but there definitely is a difference between talking about the philosophy of objectivism and saying Nathan Drake kills too many people in Uncharted. But Uncharted specifically is one that a lot of people push back against and saying this is not really a good example of this term that you're using here, and that it's actually fine if Nathan Drake kills people in his video game. It's like supposed to be like an action. It's supposed to be similar to like action movies, anyways, where often the main character would kill a lot of goons. It's just like comes with the genre. So that one is like a little bit contentious. Like people don't really agree that narrative dissonance is being applied properly in the case of Uncharted. And I have I believe that narrative dissonance it's not always it can be used as criticism, but it doesn't always have to be. So like still like today it's still used as criticism. Obviously we have Zero here, like our resident gaming journalist, who said that the disconnect between the gameplay and the story is a big part of why they didn't like The Last of Us 2. I've seen that I've seen that a lot with people. The way people talk about The Last of Us 2, I think narrative dissonance is often brought up as a point against that game. So it's still used as criticism, but it doesn't always have to be criticism. Um, in the new Yakuza or like a Dragon game, there is straight up. Well, all the Yakuza games have these wacky side games and side content, and in this new game, there's straight up a point where you just wake up on a deserted island and you start playing Animal Crossing basically. And it's an Animal Crossing type mini game, and you can spend so much time there. And a few days into the mini game, there's a dolphin that brings you back to Hawaii, and then you start playing the main story again. But you can just go back at any point back to the deserted island and play Animal Crossing, and that's like completely removed from the main story. It doesn't really make sense at all. But I don't think it's. I think it probably is lunar narrative dissonance, but I don't think it matters. I don't think fans of the game care. I don't care, but it's just like I guess it can sometimes just not be criticism at all. It's just like a thing. Well, I just want to briefly talk about lunar narrative harmony. This is if there can be a disagreement between the elements of the narrative that are conveyed by the gameplay and the story, there can also be the opposite, which is when they agree with each other. And I think a really cool example is Dark Souls, where if you give up, if you stop playing Dark Souls because you think the game is too hard, it's kind of part of the story of that game because it's all about hollowing, and hollowing is kind of a part of like losing your purpose and like giving up. So if you play Dark Souls and maybe you give up because of Blighttown or something, or because of a certain boss, then it is kind of considered, it can be considered canon that your character just went hollow, and that's I think that's kind of cool. Um, Another thing is Morrowind. I want to talk about Morrowind for a second. That game kind of addresses, like earlier when I talked about the urgency of the main story that's in these open world RPG games. Morrowind was an open world RPG game that came out like 20 years ago, but didn't have that problem. Uh, Basically, the main story of Morrowind is all the most of the main quests are given to you by this guy. I don't remember his name, but he would basically tell you. He would basically like push you away from doing the main story itself. He would tell you to like go outside and like get a job and like basically join a guild and like talk to people before doing the main story, which I think was a cool. I think it's like an interesting way for the game itself, like through dialogue, to like convey to the player, hey, you should do side quests and level up before even like doing some of the main quests. I think that was pretty cool, and that game like came out like 20 years ago, so that's pretty interesting. So one of the major like reasons I made this presentation is to kind of answer this question that I honestly didn't really answer, but it is interesting to think about. Well, we saw previously, I talked about lunar narrative harmony, but there's also, which is obviously like lunar narrative harmony is obviously something intentional that uh, developers or game devs will be praised for doing, but lunar narrative dissonance is just seen as criticism mostly, most of the time. I I'm not sure if there I was thinking of like, is this possible for there to be an intentional use of lunar narrative dissonance? And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, wait, is this harmony? Does it loop back to being harmony if the elements of the narrative through the gameplay and the story, if they disagree with each other intentionally to serve whatever purpose, is it technically harmony? I was thinking about this. I couldn't actually find any examples of games that do this. Let me know if you think of one. But I was thinking about this. Let's say there's a game where just this is a thought experiment. This is like a game that doesn't exist. But like, let's just say there's a game where you're climbing the corporate ladder. Let's say, and like you're playing as it's a game where you climb the corporate ladder and you just become the CEO of a company eventually. And it's a game where through the gameplay elements, it's kind of promoting this like upwards mobility of capitalism and the growth of capitalism and the prosperity, but maybe through dialogue, cutscenes, and other non-interactive interactions. Uh, the game is kind of goes through the harsh realities of like layoffs and other corporate culture and that sort of disagrees with what you were trying to do initially with the game. I'm not sure. Could that be an example? That game doesn't exist, but could that be an example of intentional ludonarrative dissonance? Maybe. Uh, if you guys actually know a real example, let me know because I tried looking for one and I couldn't find one. So in conclusion, ludonarrative in general is a phenomenon that's unique to the medium of video games. No other medium has this. Uh, no other medium has this kind of phenomenon, and I think it's fascinating, and I think there's still so much room for what can be done with ludonarrative. There's like ways we can make use of it, and it's really interesting to think about. Um, like how we can use harmony or dissonance if that's possible. Can we use dissonance to in games like intentionally? So I think that's interesting to think about. So yeah, that's it. So thank you everyone for watching. If you have any, if anyone has any questions or comments, let me know.
I just realized you can't put sounds on this stage, but I'd play the clapping sound right now if I could.
Oh, thank you, Kaisaan.
Yeah, thank you, Zohair, for that very insightful presentation on something I've never heard of until you brought it up. I learned something new every day thanks to
Um,
this
I,
club.
I'm
Does,
muted. Good job. Yeah, thank you.
thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Um, there was like people dropping comments and stuff in the chat. If you want to look at that, maybe like reply. But I don't think we have any questions. But I think no, people are typing. Never mind.
Oh, okay. People are typing. Um, okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Since I can talk, I'm going to use my privilege to say the comments out loud. Um, when you're talking about ludonarrative harmony, I was thinking about Celeste, the very hard game. In the very beginning, it's like be proud of your death count. It's how far it shows how far you've come. I think that also works as an example of like ludonarrative harmony. I would argue because that game is very hard. You die a lot, but it's about like overcoming um, your demons that game.
Yeah. I've actually, I think a lot of people bring up Celeste for this. I haven't played the game yet, but yeah, a lot of people do bring up Celeste as an example for that.
I'm not surprised. Yeah,
So Cyberpunk, the missions, yeah, Cyberpunk is like a weird example because the game tells you that you have like almost 2 weeks left to live, but um, you can just like the game has like a day and night cycle. You can spend a lot more than 2 weeks like doing whatever. So it's that game especially is kind of weird with that. But yeah, yeah, that's like an extreme example of the urgency of the main quest being dissonant with the rest of the game.
Can I ask a quick question? Like
Yeah,
about linear narrative harmony. Um, like, did it mean that like it uses? Can you just explain it again, real quick?
right. So Ludo narrative harmony is when the narrative of the gameplay, so the gameplay will have its own narrative, and then there's also like the non-interactive elements of the game, like cutscenes and dialogue, that will also have its own narrative, and the narrative harmony is when they agree with each other. Uh,
Oh, so like Dark Souls.
yeah, like Dark Souls, exactly.
Right. Sekiro's like that too. the main theme of that game is hesitation is defeat, and that really reflects on the boss fights, where if you hesitate during the fight and just try to play too defensively, you'll die.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't beaten Sekiro yet, but like I can definitely see that with what I've played so far. Could this apply to scenarios with how some RPG weapons have lore and properties that don't reflect in their performance in combat? I actually think, yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how in the newest, well, I guess in the newest Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, it's like there's like more reasons why the Master Sword should be really strong in that game, but it's like not really strong at all. It's kind of like it's really frustrating actually, like how weak the Master Sword still is in that game. But yeah, I guess that could be an example. If I guess that could be example. Yeah, I can see that.
Oh yeah, I wrote this like in the chat, but like you were talking about Uncharted 4 and like that achievement, right?
Yeah.
Uh, there's interesting history about the development of that game. So they made Neil Druckmann direct it because Amy Hennig just didn't really like the development of that game was a mess under Amy Hennig, so they like kicked her off. But Neil Druckmann didn't actually like Uncharted, like because of the same reason you actually mentioned, like
Oh,
which is interesting. Which ironically, I don't know much about Last of Us 2, but I hear it suffers from the same problem of like you were like describing, which is kind of interesting to see.
yeah. So yeah, really quickly, just like the people in the chat mentioning how yeah, if you recruit enemy units and they get nerfed, that's also like an example, and also yeah, the boss when they join your party, yeah, that's definitely an example. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for your questions. Vor Void Stranger has good little narrative harmony. Jaden keeps mentioning that game. Uh, I'll probably play it at some point. Thank you everyone.
Feel free to just put them in chat wherever. I do have chat open on my screen. Yeah, let's get started. So I am talking about the game Figros as like the intersection between creative coding and game design. So for me, besides games, I'm also interested in like software art, computer art more generally. So, and as a case study for that, I'll be talking about this particular rhythm game. So, what is creative coding, you might ask? It's a broad term. I'm using it as d- I'm using it as writing programs or like scripts that, when they're executed, create visuals. So I am a regular participant in meetups run by Creative Code Toronto. This is an art and a tech group that is run by a prominent contributor to a creative coding program. And this on screen right now is a screenshot of me giving a presentation at Creative Code Toronto, in which I share a screenshot of myself giving a presentation at the last GDYU PowerPoint night. So as you can see, there is a lot of overlap in what I talk about between both groups. Um, so then, in that case, what is Figros? Figros is it's a rhythm game specifically for mobile devices. You play the game by like tapping your screen at the right time. Um, well, there are two major elements where this game is distinctive from, I'd say, other mobile games, especially mobile rhythm games. First of all, Figros is entirely free, as in it's a free game to download. There's no DLC or premium content. The other thing is that it is considered a laneless game, quote marks there. Compare it to something like Osumania. It also has this whole gameplay you can see here of notes that scroll downward on the screen. But Osumania has fixed lanes that are associated with specific keys on your keyboard. On the other hand, Figros, the judgment line is continuous and notes can be anywhere along it. So, and it's able to do that because you're tapping directly on the screen. There's less of a, the interaction is more directly as opposed to Osumania where it is associated with keys, as said. And the game's pretty simple. There are only 4 different note types in the game. There's the blue note, the long blue note, the red note, and the yellow note. The difference between them is minimal. They all behave the same way in that they move down on the screen, and you have to tap them when they hit the judgment line at the bottom. This is pretty simple, except there is a third thing about this game I haven't mentioned, is that when I say the notes move down toward the judgment line at the bottom, I mean they can move in any direction to a judgment line that can be anywhere on the screen. It can move. The judgment line can move freely. Notes can scroll toward it from either direction. This is the major gimmick of this game. This is where the game design of it all comes in. Each level is a question of how to create something that makes use of this mechanic in ways that are fun and interesting, but also fair to the player. And this is actually also where the creative coding of this all comes in, especially since music is involved. There are plenty of ways to design this movement of this judgment line so that it responds to that music. So I have a bunch of examples of this. These are video examples of levels in the game. It is videos of myself playing the levels. So you can be able to see both what the game looks like and what it looks like to execute it. First of all, we're just going to talk pretty simply about moving judgment lines. The most common pattern is like a subtle tilting back and forth of the judgment line. It's timed to match the particular rhythm of the song. Here is an example. My first example here. This is a song called "The Mountain Eater." As you'll see, the judgment line will remain at the bottom of the screen. It'll only angle very slightly. It's subtle enough that it doesn't really affect the scrolling of the notes, but it's still timed to the beats of the song, and its particular, like the sharpness of his motion represents like the retro game vibe of the song. It creates like a visual identity to the chart, but it's still pretty straightforward to play. I will play this video for you now.
I think you're muted. Yo, I think you're muted.
I am muted, so you can hear it, but barely. Yeah.
We can only like hear it through your mic, the audio.
Okay. So you can't really hear that?
Now we can.
Okay, let me try one more. All right, sorry for the troubleshooting. Here's example number 2, a fun mechanic that the game makes extensive use of. There can be more than one judgment line on the screen at a time. This lends itself well to like purely visual patterns. I have here the chart for "You Are the Miserable." There are a bunch of T-Pazolite mentioned. Yes, I am a huge T-Pazolite stan. The chart for "You Are the Miserable" has a lot of judgment lines in the background. They aren't used for any notes at all, but they add some like extra dancing motion, and it has some simple visuals that fit the sound. I did just remember that my face cam is where I put my hand cam, so I'm gonna just hide that for now. So Here we go. Let me pull on you, or let me throw on You Are the Miserable here. I do, yes, Jasmine, I do like this song. I keep doing that. Okay. Anyways, let's ignore that. So those multiple judgment lines you'd seen in the background are the key to almost all of the most like extensive animations and visual effects in the game. The level designers are extremely limited in what they can do. They can only, with the judgment lines, they only have a single color, and it must go straight through the screen. It can't be like half the screen sort of deal. But they can affect the opacity of the judgment lines, and they can have an arbitrary number of lines on the screen at once. These two things are what takes the level designers everywhere throughout their design of this game. Here's a very short example of one pattern that is very simple but definitely effective. I'll just show it first, and then I will talk about it. Oh my goodness. Okay. My apologies. There we go. That effect over there with all the lines that are coming together in the beginning. It fans out with the opacity, and then they explode all the way out like this. It uses those lines to create that larger shape, fanning out, heavily accentuating that part of the saxophone. It is very nice. That is lovely. That was lovely to see for the first time. That's why Time to Night Sky is one of my favorite charts in this game. All right, here we have a way more extensive example of that kind of effect in the chart of Dance with Silence. This level uses a lot of very fast-moving judgment lines to create the illusion of perspective, to make it look as if the player is traveling in motion as they play. This is the beginning of the song. I will play it right now. There we are. That's just going to happen every time. I've accepted my fate. Yeah, and you can see, you might have noticed the second half during the build-up did very slightly change the angle of the lines coming in from the background. It makes it look more like rotating spotlights instead of moving through a tunnel, in my view. Now, let's get into fake note territory. There's a lot of the fake judgment lines. They are definitely the core of the animations. But and this is in fact the primary way level designers create the animation, but they can also create notes that aren't intended to be pressed, that are purely visual. These fake notes can be used for those animations that require shorter lines. If you need a line that doesn't go through the whole screen, you can use a fake note for that. So I have an example here from the level for Chronomia. It's an excellent example. The song has a clock motif that's repeated throughout, and it uses the fake notes to simulate hands on a clock. There we are. This is also a nice song. Also note that bit at the ending, that fun bit at the ending that includes that as the note as the judgment line spins from the top toward the bottom, it has some extra ones briefly appearing in its wake to create like an after image effect. And I have here some additional examples of the ways level designs use all of the mechanics, judgment and notes, to create gameplay and art at the same time. This is a collection of some of my favorite patterns in some of my favorite levels in this game. So we have Fully Auto Buster, which you will see one specific note doing a little dance throughout the song. Another Me creates a narrative inspired by its title of like two different people from two mirror worlds who are joining together. Rariel also has a clock motif, and it uses notes to create a like grandfather clock pendulum motion. It also has my favorite like rewinding effect in the game. Destruction 321, you will see them create a circle from lines, and Nelv is just wild the whole way through. This one, hope you guys enjoy this. All right, there's that video. One final thing I'm going to say at the ending note is that if all of these levels I've showcased seem kind of impossible to play, that's honestly because they pretty much are. Figros has a difficulty rating scale from 1 to 15. Every level I've shown is the hardest difficulty for that level, and they are rated either 13, 14, 15. All of these I've shown are the upper end of difficulty. In fact, Rariel, Destructions 321 are two of some of the hardest songs in the game. This is in fact definitely not beginner gameplay. Beginner gameplay is obviously a lot more restrained about the visual effects. That's understandable because that's for new players who are trying to get a grip of the mechanics. My face cam again. Rhythm games I find especially interesting in the way that the easier content is often more restrained in that way. Pretty much every art game is seen as more of a casual game. They're very easy, so that like an art enjoyer who doesn't play games can play it. Makes sense. But rhythm games are the opposite, because you'll see a lot of more artistic and visually interesting stuff, generally reserved for some of the highest tiers of play. Because from a game design perspective, that's where it's most fair to do this kind of stuff. It's definitely a lot more reasonable to expect doing this kind of stuff from people who have already mastered the mechanics, from people who have not. And I like hard games and I like art games, so I especially love how these hardcore rhythm games intersect those two things. All right, and that is the end of what I have. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them now. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for listening.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I've just got the sending screen up. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Zohair. It doesn't seem like we have any questions. If there's anyone who wanted to ask something, well, they can at me in chat, and I will answer to the best of my ability. Oh, people are typing. Let me just wait a bit. Just in case. Do you think there's any way for rhythm games to be more popular if people in the United States made them? They're generally all made for. Also, if the arcade cabinets came to the States, there are almost no arcades in Toronto, and the ones that exist have like old DDR, like old 13-year-old DDR cabinets. It's popular in like East Asia, Japan, China, that sort of place, because that's where they're produced and that's where they're made, and that's where people play them. I think if more of the more of the modern arcade cabinets got brought over to North America, I think that'd be the big one. Jaden, what is your opinion on DDR and other foot rhythm games? I don't know if you remember my presentation on not ITG from a couple PowerPoint nights back. That is technically a foot rhythm game, the one with all the funny visuals. I'm also a big fan of DDR and dance games. I play dance games. I own a hard pad. I play what's known as technical in the groove, which uses like really fancy foot patterns that are kind of difficult, that are known for being just difficult to execute. And I think on that difficulty scale, it's generally accepted to go from like 1 to 13. I can usually play 8. So I'm definitely better at the mobile games, but I do play a lot of dance games too. I really want to play the Pump It Up cabinet in the break room. I'm just shy. I believe that is all the questions. Oh, Jaden's typing again. The Pump It Up at the Rec Room in Toronto has Bad Apple and K-pop. That tracks. Yeah. Shout out Pump It Up. So yes, yeah. All right, thank you very much for listening, everyone. I will be in the audience. If anyone happens to have any further questions for me, they can ping me in the audience chat. I promise for today I will not block you if you do that. If anyone was here for like the pre-show where I complained about people pinging me, I won't complain. I promise. Thank you guys for your time.
Time for me to talk about my latest brain rot, my latest obsession. I don't know. It's East. But before we start, I'm gonna give myself a little introduction. Cause my name is Kaisaan. I'm For those who don't know, I'm your community manager, one of your community managers here at GDYU. I like games. The games include the things I listed here. This is just to prove that I play more games than just Mega Man. I play lots of games. I'm in computer science because I like programming and I like games. I make ROM hacks, so it's kind of a mix of two things. Um, if you know these games, you're a cool person, and I can talk about these games. I don't just talk about Mega Man or Castlevania like you've seen me in the other presentations. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're only here to talk about one of my obsessions, which is Ys. Now, what exactly is Ys for those who haven't really heard of the series? Basically, it's a series of action RPG games that was made by Nihon Falcom. You've probably, if you've heard of the Trails series, like Trails of the Sky, Trails of Cold Steel, it's the same people who made those, or like Xanadu or Legend of Heroes, a little bit more obscure. Ys is like their other flagship series. But they're a lot more of a smaller company compared to like your Square Enix or like your Nintendo or your Segas or whatever. But this series I was recommended by a friend and I just kind of got really obsessed. And what exactly is this series about? Well, it's about this main guy named Adol the Red because he has red hair and his adventures throughout the world and how he meets different people, meets different kingdoms, and all that fun stuff. What I really like about the series, besides the really great music that every game has, is the fact that it's very much a gameplay oriented series. I don't know if that's like a term, but like the main focus of the series is to have fun gameplay, fun combat, and then everything else is secondary to that. But the music is also really good, and because I've played all the games, you get to see all the different connections that each game has, and little callbacks and references. And so, what I want to do in this presentation is kind of go over each of the main games. There's only 11 games in the series right now, or 12. Yeah, no, wait. There's 11 right now, but there's like 10 playable right now. So I just want to go over each one of them and kind of explain what they're about, and mainly to say why I like each of the games because I really love like all the games. So that's what we're gonna do. So first, we're gonna start off with East One. Now, for context, this series itself is very old. I think it's 35 years old now, but the good thing is that a lot of the older titles have been remade or remastered or ported onto modern systems. So on like each of the little bullet points, I'll have like a list of systems that like you can play on today. I also include like PSP and Vita because maybe some of y'all have like a PSP or Vita. But most of these games are available on PC, on Steam. They're all Steam Deck verified, so if you have those systems, give it a try. I'll send links to the games later. I also have little uh, estimated times, mainly from how long to beat. So the shorter time is like main story. The farther end is going to be like if you 100% the game. But as you can see, East One is very short, being literally the first game, and every remaster kind of only expands on a little bit. But the main thing that this game really has, besides it being Adolf's first adventure, is the concept of the bump combat system. The bump combat system is what makes the series unique. Sadly, it didn't really stay on for that long, but it's still really cool where you're fighting just by running into the enemy, but as this little diagram shows, you can't just run head on. You want to like attack off center or diagonally to actually get more damage. And obviously, attacking enemies from behind gives you even more damage, and I find that really fun. Now, the reason why it's called Ys is because this first game is about Adol exploring this lost kingdom named East that was up in the sky at one point, and he visits the continent Asteria where East once was placed above. Like the island of East was above Asteria at one point, and he finds these different books that chronicle the old knowledge that East had, and enters Darm Tower, which is like the final tower of the game. The game's very short, being only about like 8 hours long, And one of the things I really love is the soundtrack is by Yuzo Koshiro, which you may have heard from other games like Etrian Odyssey or Streets of Rage or Seventh Dragon. Um, I forgot what he's doing now, but he's always still making music and he still talks about East. I really love the bump combat system of this game, and this is a great start point. Now, what comes after one is obviously two. The thing with one and two is that they were meant to be a single game, so modern releases will always just have them bundled. So if you go on Steam, it'll be one and two Chronicles Plus. This pretty much this is just a continuation of. Oh, I didn't change the second point. That's funny. Yeah, I just copied from the first one. My bad. But basically, while Adol discovers the secrets of East, he meets more about the different goddesses, the different priests that all used to rule East and where they are now. He also meets this guy. You can see this guy in the blue. His name is Dogi. He's introduced in East One and he becomes pretty much Adol's right hand man in the later games. He's like his uh adventuring partner or something. I don't know. But in this game, the bump combat is still used, as you can see with this funny little GIF or GIF I have over here, where he's literally like bumping into the final boss and destroying him. And what I really like is that over here we have the addition of magic spells, stuff such as like time stop or like having a ranged fire magic. So it's like a nice little sequel to the first game and only a little bit longer. These games were really fun. The bomb combat definitely made it very unique for its time and definitely revolutionized action RPGs. And yeah, really good duology, I guess you could say. Now, with the East 1 and 2 being released and kind of having this legacy, what they decided to do was make a little origin game. I guess you could say it's like the Yakuza 0 of the series, where just different engine, but still like a prequel to the first few games. East Origin's actually available on a lot of systems. It's the only game available on Xbox One, so if y'all got an Xbox, this is the only game you can really play on that, sadly. And this game pretty much takes place instead of having Adol like every other game. This game instead it takes place 700 years before. It explains why East was so important and how the people of East came back down to the earth and how Dorm Tower, which is like the final area of East One, exists. It provides a lot more context for those two games. And what's really unique about this game that I really like is that you actually play through different characters and you get to see the story unfold from like their different perspectives. The main character is Unica. Well, one of the main characters is Unica. Um, she's the person that you can see right here in the front. Um, she's pretty cool. She got a sword like Adol. The other characters are like spellcasters or other kind of weapons. What this game adds is this three element system where you can collect these different artifacts to gain different kind of abilities, such as a wind ability, thunder, and fire. And instead of just being elemental based, it also helps in your actual movement. So for example, the wind ability will let you float in the air longer and also be like a kind of a spinning attack. So it has like different uses. I strongly recommend playing this game before or after playing one and two. It doesn't really matter. I just put it after because it just was released after. But this game really has a lot of references to the first two games, and that's what I really enjoyed. Was just like catching all the little references that it had, and the ending part really like uh better recontextualizes the first two games. Now we can go back to numbers. We got three. So remember Dogi I mentioned? So he has his own homeland, which we eventually return to in this game in Felgana, and while Adol and Dogi are there, they figure out that there's a lot of civil unrest going on. It starts off with it just being, oh, there's monsters around, to, oh, the ruler is being a lot more tyrannical, and they try to figure out why. And what I really like is about this game is how it uses the three weapon system that I mentioned, the three little elements that you can switch between. It does that really well. And the story itself is also really interesting as while they do get closer to the truth, the stakes get higher as it starts off from it being like, oh no, this kingdom's in danger to like, oh no, the entire world might be in danger. We're not sure. We gotta find out what's going on. And that's what I really like about this game and just the overall gameplay, despite it being relatively short. Um, it's really short but sweet. That's definitely one of the ones that like really got me into the series. Like once I've beaten like 1 and 2 in Origin. Oh, and also for context, 3 and 4, this game and the previous one also have like older versions that exist. I'm just talking about whatever's available on modern-ish platforms. And for the also for context of why I have certain stuff highlighted and bolded or underlined and bolded is just the versions that I recommend, and then other versions that just exist that still um are still playable. I just recommend like for example for this game for East 4, um the game just runs better on PS4 and PC, which is why I recommend it over the Vita version. Now East 4 is also an interesting one where again the combat changes if you've played it in this order is that instead of having just one person, you have an entire party, usually a party of 3 people at a time that are playable, but you'll have usually around 6, 7, or 8 people to choose from and then build your party off of that. But each character has a different kind of attack type, which I find really cool because you want to build your party so that you have at least one of each attack type, which is effective against different types of enemies. Now, this game itself, Memories of Celceta, is literally Adol recollecting his memories of Celceta, which is this city with a large forest inside of it, which is like kind of this like lost maze, lost woods kind of thing where anyone that goes in it kind of like is never seen again or like has a hard time finding their way back. But it seems like as you play through this game, Adol has been able to go through this entire forest relatively fine, but because he's somehow amnesiac, as you find out, um, he struggles a lot more to get through. But obviously, meeting these people that have already met him before or meeting people for the first time, he's able to work with all of them to get through Salsetta and its forest and solve its mysteries. And what's cool is that not only is he regaining different memories from just that little his first expedition, but he also regains memories of stuff that happens before, which includes like his childhood and stuff. So this is the game where we really learn a lot more about Adel as a character. Before this, he's more of just a silent protagonist, but I still think he has his own character that later games definitely have, which is why I really like this game. Now, now for East 5, this game is an interesting one. Um, Mainly because this game isn't actually playable on modern systems, but it does have a fan translation for the Super Nintendo, which is like really well done. And I still think it's worth playing. You could just wait for a remake, but in this game, I actually made a typo. I just realized. But here in this game, Adol ends up in Zandria, in a place called Africa. That's supposed to be Africa with an O, not an I. A lot of places in East the East series are just named after real places with like a little bit of spelling changes, so it's very much like our real world but little changes, and I forgot to make the little change, but it's okay. The main goal of this game is to collect crystals and which seem to be related to this lost kingdom named Kefin. And as Adol figures out, a lot of people who have tried to search for Kefin end up go missing or just like um never are able to find it. And Adol, being the adventurer he is, obviously wants to go search for it. What's interesting about this game is that its combat is pretty much a standard, like swing your sword. You have a like a mana system where you have magic, but you just kind of swing your sword. So it's like a lot um like your Secret of Mana series or like your Gaia trilogy for the SNES, like a lot of those kind of games, and it's really cool to have East like that. Um, and I guess again, if you want to wait for maybe a remake, they have said they're interested in remaking this game. They just don't have the time. I still recommend this game. Some people consider it the black sheep of the series, but I still think it's still an East game, and still think it's worth playing. And I really enjoyed it, despite it being relatively short. But that's just how East was for a long time. Was that Falcom just being a relatively smaller company, and they still are today. they're still able to do so much within like the limited resources they have. Like it's not gonna be like your very large like Square Enix kind of like action RPGs or like your Devil May Cry or whatever, but it still is a fun experience that these games are in. East 5 still really shows that. Now for the next game, East 6. This game um is like a kind of a conclusion-ish series or like a nice culmination in terms of story and lore, which is what I really like this game. And in this game, Adol washes up ashore on a random island, and that's kind of like a running gag in the series, is where most games just start off with Adol just randomly being washed up ashore, like getting into a boat accident, and just which is like I guess a funny way of like why he loses all his stuff in between games, which is cool. And so in this game, he's landed on the Canaan Islands and meets these new kind of race called the Reda, which are like long-eared elfish-like people, and you find out that they have a lot of beef with the humans, as the humans kind of want to extract the natural resources of their land versus them wanting to stay in harmony with the land. And while this is all happening, the different islands are all surrounded by this great vortex, pretty much like the Bermuda Triangle kind of thing. Like all those myths about the Bermuda Triangle, it's like any ship that goes in, it kind of disappears, or like they all die or whatever, like disaster happens. So this game is where we figure out the mysteries of all that, and we meet some more recurring characters here and characters from previous games. And what I really again like is just how it just culminates everything together. It's not like a full conclusion, but it definitely gives a lot more context for the previous games. As you can tell, I really like the story of this series, but again, it's still a gameplay first series. I just like the story, so I'm just saying why I like those games. Now for E7, this one's like one of the bigger games where that a lot of people like. E7, literally just called E7, no funny subtitle. All it is again Adol visiting another kingdom of what's called the Roman Empire. That's Roman with a U instead of an A. Um, Again, very obvious nod to real life in this game. Adol visiting the kingdom of Altago actually gets in trouble pretty quickly. Getting arrested for messing with like the royal knights, but because he's recognized as an adventurer, the king like gives him a pardon. And is instead tasked to like figure out what's going on with all the earthquakes. Him and Dogi, again, you can see him in the blue over there, go on and meet all these other people, which again, it's the party system of the game of this E series. So he'll meet different people, and a lot of these people have different connections to the old mythologies that Altago had that a lot of people don't seem to believe in anymore, except for like the people that adult meets. And the whole like concept of like mythologies like kind of manifesting um in if enough people believe in it is like what makes this game like what makes the story continue, or like is the main drive of the story. And what I really like is just the high stakes that happen and the sudden turns. I wouldn't say they're plot twists, but just more like sudden things happen and it affects like the actual goal. Because our first goal is obviously to figure out the earthquakes, but you figure out a lot more things are happening, and then even more things happen. And I just really like that, and it all goes together in a nice conclusion. It's not like there's anything unanswered. Now for probably the biggest game in the series, probably the most popular one, is East 8. This game definitely like made East a lot more popular if it wasn't like already the previous games. Um so I guess if you want like a single game to play, I guess it would be East 8 because everyone just seems to love it. I also enjoy it. I just think 9 is better. We'll get to 9. But obviously, just like some of the other East games, Adol's again swept up onto this island that they're like the ship that he's on is like attacked by this like kraken kind of monster, and so Adol and everyone on the ship kind of gets like swept up onto this island, and they're all far apart. And but eventually Adol does meet up with other people, other castaways, and he eventually saves them. Some of them join his party, some of them just stay together to help kind of build a little village thing, and everyone is just trying to leave the island, but everyone's trying to work together. Now, while Adol is doing all of this, like during the night while he's like camping out, he'll have these like random dreams about this other girl named Donna, where at first he's just having like what seems like random memories from like Donna's memory or something, to straight up later you do control Donna, and I guess like in those dreams, like whatever happens in that dream world ends up affecting the real life, which is really cool. And so, um, in this one, we're just figuring out more of the mysteries, and what I really enjoy is all the how all the characters, how they all work together, and how they all have different backgrounds. Like they're all very different people. Some of them are like royal people. Some of them are just regular woodworkers. How they all work together um, for one common goal, which is to escape. Now for the latest game so far, my favorite game is ETH 9. Now, this game again, he's Adol's already a known name, so when he enters this prison city, he gets arrested immediately for like no real reason. They interrogate him over like silly stuff, and they don't really have a case, but he's still thrown in jail. And if he figures out that a lot of other people in the prison that he's in are just wrongfully thrown in, but Adol's able to escape and turns into this kind of being called a monstrum. You can kind of see Adol over here. He's a lot more edgier here, and he's not the only one that's become a monstrum. It's all these other mysterious people. They're like a vigilante like group of the series or of the city, and Adol becomes one of them. And in this game, it's a lot about solving the mysteries of this random city that Adol ended up in, and being a fugitive the whole time, being wanted. As he does escape, he's still on the run. He still needs to hide his identity, but also hide his identity as a monstrum. So it's really cool. Playing as the monstrum, you have like different abilities. Also, his like nickname as a monstrum is Crimson King, which is very funny. For anyone that likes King Crimson, this is not a JoJo reference. It's just the music. I think it would be funny if it was a JoJo reference. I'm not sure, but I think this is probably my favorite game just because of all the little references that it has, and like the ending part hits really hard for me after I've played all the games. So honestly, I want to recommend this game as a first game, but I honestly just recommend playing it um after everything else if you can. Now again, I just talked about like 10 games. What do you want to do? What do you want to play? You might be confused. Well, for whatever game that I hopefully described really well, whatever interested you the most, pick with that, start with that. Each game, while I do say they're all story connected, they're really not. They're all very self-contained. You could, excuse me, pick any game in the series, start with that, and kind of still enjoy the story that is there. It's very much just little Easter eggs and cameos that reward the players for if they've played the other games, like reward veteran players. But they still do describe the other games very well if you need it. Like they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you remember when we went to this kingdom and we saw this thing? It's like this." Like they'll explain it as needed, so you're not feeling left out for any missing context. Now, if you're just like can't decide and you just want to maybe play one game in the series and just give that game a try, I'd recommend maybe 3, 4, or 8. I'd only recommend 9. That's still again my favorite game, but only after you've like played a few other games, maybe after playing 9 or after playing 8, sorry. Now for a recommended order, I just recommend the order that I just presented it in, playing Origin after or before 1 and 2, and then just playing everything else in numerical order. You can also play in release order, and you can also play the older versions of the games. Over here in the bottom right, I have a little timeline that we have where East 1 and 2. Yeah, the timeline's a little bit out of order, but it's not too difficult. I still recommend playing in numerical order or release order because that just was how the games were written. For example, East 10 takes place right after East 2, very early in the timeline, but there's not going to be any uh, issues if you don't play any of the games before or after. I think it'll be fine if you just played East 10 whenever it releases. As for the future, as I do mention, or well, before we get to that, here's again a little really nice diagram of what's available. This is the full timeline, not including East 5 because it's not on modern platforms, but it also includes all the additional platforms, modern platforms that all the games are on. As you can see, everything's available on Steam, with some games being on like PlayStation and Switch. I recommend just playing the Steam versions because that's where you can play all the series. They're not very difficult to run. East 9 being the most intensive just because it's the newest, was able to run fine on my old laptop. A lot of these games again are able to run on like the Vita, so or like PSP, so you should be fine. You can run on Switch. I just again recommend the PC version or whatever console you have and whatever games are available for that. Now for the future of East, or like what to do if you're like me and you've already caught up with the series, well, you can just replay the games. There's different difficulty options, there's different new game pluses, and all that kind of nice stuff. But one thing that there is older versions of the games. A lot of them still hold up, especially for 1 and 2. And 4, I've heard, has a lot of like older releases that really hold up. I still haven't played them myself. I will get to that. That's what I plan on doing. You could just play the East spin-offs. There is in fact a typing game of East. There's also a strategy game. There's also a fighting game. East versus Trails Alternative Saga. That got a fan translation. That game is on the PSP. And it's just a crossover fighting game with Falcom's other series. And for one thing that I have something to look forward to finally in life is East 10 releasing in English. It already released last September in Japan, but the way this company works is the way Falcom works is they obviously don't have their own Western team, so they have to ask a different company to make translations. So we're waiting for that. It should be releasing this fall, so I'm looking forward to that. You could also try out the other games by Falcom. These two games, Tokyo Xanadu and Legend of Nayuta, are also action RPGs, which are similar to East, I've heard. So you could also try those out. As for where else you can kind of like search up for more stuff, there's also the fandom wiki. There's a lot of spoilers, so I'd maybe avoid that until you've beaten a game and kind of want to like see more info. But GameFAQs is great for spoiler-free guides, and also digital MLOs. This website's very great for beginners and people that want to get into the series. Great like beginner info, and also I did make my own little translation spreadsheet as a lot of the older versions have not been translated and some have been fan translated. So that's what I decided to make for myself whenever I get to the other older series or older games in the series. But yeah, that's everything I have to say. Well, I obviously have more to talk about, but this is what I want to say for like people that want to get into the series. Um, go play East. Please. Yeah. And if you have any questions, you can ask me now. You can hit me up whenever of anything. And yeah, that's it.
I'm really happy I get a chance to talk about another game that I'm making you all listen to me talk about again. Katana Zero. Katana Zero is a really good game. It's one of my absolute like favorite games of all time. But as I was making the presentation about it, I know I want to talk about it like for this presentation, but as I was making the presentation for it, I was kind of confused because I realized that it's really different than a lot of other games that I usually like. So before I presented about Ring Road and about Nuclear Throne, and those are kind of open-ended. They give you a lot of different ways to interact with the world and lots of different options. But Katana Zero is a linear story game. And because of that, I was kind of confused about why I liked it at first. And I think to try and get into it and to explain it, I have to explain a bit about what Katana Zero is like. So, oh shit. Oh no. Okay. So, Katana Zero is, it calls itself an action platformer. You can also think of it as a hack and slash. And most of the time it looks like this, or like this, or like this. And this is what most of the gameplay is like. Is you play in this combat and you fight against large groups of enemies. If you played a game like Hotline Miami, it's honestly kind of similar. It's it's just a side-scrolling 2D sword fighting game, and it's really good. The combat is really well balanced. It's really polished. All of the things are really, really great. But I don't think this is what I love about Katana Zero. It's definitely a good thing, don't get me wrong. But I think that if Katana Zero was only the combat, I don't think I would like it as much as I do. And I can actually even think about that because there's a mode in Katana Zero, if you play speedrun mode, where it takes away all of the story elements and it only leaves the combat. And like I've played it and it's fun, but I think that if I played that as the first time I played Katana Zero, I don't think that I would like the game as much as I do. So I think to explain a bit about why I like Katana Zero, it's that when you have a combat moment like this, with lots of intense fighting and action that's really good, it sometimes is followed right after by a moment like this. There's no fighting, the action stops, and you have to have moments of story where you get context and explanation for everything that you're doing. I think that Katana Zero, and it's not the only game to do this, and it's not the first, but it's the one that made me realize it. It's a game with many dimensions. And what I sort of learned from Katana Zero is that what I like about it isn't any individual part of it, but how those parts interact. And especially for me, it's how the combat and the gameplay interacts with the story, the main and the secondary parts of the story that the game gives you. A lot of the story takes place outside of combat, which might be kind of weird for a game that has such a focus on combat mechanics. But Katana Zero spends a lot of time outside of combat in the place you live, and this is your home. You have your neighbors on one side. There's like an empty apartment on the other side, and in the middle is your home. And this is where you spend a lot of the time in game, and a lot of story development actually happens here. And one of the most important story developments that happens around your home is you meet a little girl. She never actually has a name, and so I'm just going to call her the little girl. But yeah, you meet her pretty early on in the game, and she kind of is isolated, and she becomes attached to you almost as a person. And she'll be important throughout the story, but yeah, you just meet her early on, and you interact with her almost every time you come back home. And you come back home every time you finish a mission and you defeat the final boss or some last level. You spend a lot of time also not in combat, but not in your home, wandering around the streets of the city that you live in. You live in the third district of a city called New Mecca, and you spend a lot of time wandering around the streets and having some story encounters here. And this is one of the things. Wandering makes it seem like open world. It's a level that happens here, but this is one of them. You meet this old veteran over here, and you come up to him and you get into an argument. You start fighting. He says that he talks about how he killed people in the Cro-Mag War and how he deserves he needs medicine. He deserves your respect and your help. And you say you don't owe him anything, and you try and leave. You get into a fight, and there's only two ways to end the fight. You can either threaten him, or if it goes badly, you can kill him. You spend a lot of the time in the game also dreaming. And these dreams happen, again, at home, like between every combat mission that you do. You spend some time dreaming. And these dreams are at first kind of vague, but you spend time learning to interpret them, and they get more and more fleshed out. You spend a lot of time talking about them with your psychiatrist. And calling him a psychiatrist is kind of weird because he also gives you like people to assassinate. But he is also a psychiatrist, and you spend some time talking with him about the dreams that you're having. You have these mysterious dreams of memories you don't really have, but the first time you speak to him, he asks you if you've had these dreams. You know they're important in some way, but in the beginning, you're not really sure how. The dreams I can't talk about the dreams of Katana Zero without talking about these two guys, the masked men. So on the left is comedy, and on the right is tragedy, and they appear to you sometimes when you're dreaming, and they give you ominous warnings about the future. They say that you have only a few days left. You have to make a choice. Your fate is sealed, and you're doomed. You don't know at first what this means, but they appear every so often. They mock you. They give you premonitions about the future, but this all happens outside of your control. You wake up and you go back to the only part of the game you do have control over, which is the combat missions that you have. When you have things like this, Katana Zero can get kind of retrospective sometimes, or introspective. And it spends a lot of time making you question what you're doing and asking yourself what's going on. And this scene is one of those things that really highlights, I think, the relationship between the story and the mechanics. And please, like, as I'm talking about this, try and think about how playing the game and playing through the levels might how your perception of that might be changed by this sort of story elements that I'm talking about. In this scene, you hear some narration about the war that you fought in, where you hear that you rely on a drug called Chronos that you need to become a super soldier, but which slows down your perception of time. And it makes time feel longer and longer. Right before this scene, you actually saw a tape of one of the main bosses of the game, a gangster called V, torturing your neighbors. Do you remember the people who were like partying next to you before? It was a tape of him torturing them by injecting them with Chronos so that their perception of time would slow down so much that their entire like understanding of reality would be warped. And it kind of feels different now. It doesn't feel the same as it did before, because in the first mission, maybe you could just have fun being a swordsman and fighting some people. But now you have context for the abilities that you're using, the people that you're fighting, and the place that you're fighting them in. And it feels different than it did before. Comedy and tragedy show you another scene. This time, you're the old veteran. It's in the far future. You're begging for medicine. And they just mock your misfortune. But the game has to go on. You keep going on some missions. You fight some more people. You defeat some more bosses. And your psychiatrist is very controlling of what you can say. There's one boss you have to fight where he tells you not to talk to him at all. You just have to kill him right away. And you go through some ominous levels. And at the end of one level, you come here and you get drunk. You talk to these two guys at the bar, and they tell you that they're old veterans from the Cro-Mag War. You told them that you're a veteran too. They say you look too young. They explain how the Cro-Mag War was such a disaster, but we could have almost won if the government wouldn't have wasted their money on null soldiers and on super soldier projects like you. You don't tell them that you're a null soldier, but you hear them talk about it, and they hate the null program. They hate you. You say that, and you hear them listen. You hear them say that if the government just if people just didn't care so much about all the killing of civilians that was going on, then maybe they could have won. And things are starting to feel different again. And I don't know, as you play more of Katana Zero, you start to recontextualize more of what's happening and get a different understanding of the kind of person that you are. After this level, you come home and you meet the little girl back at your apartment. She tries to say something to you, but you're too drunk to understand what she says. You just go home, you fall asleep right away. Then comes an incredibly good level of a combat scene, and you have this really cool fight throughout the game. But near the end of the level, this happens. You get surrounded by soldiers on all sides, and you know from your past experience playing the game that it's over for you. There's no way you can take all these guys down. And you're thinking, is this the end? But this isn't the end of my presentation, because comedy and tragedy appear again. They give you a choice. They say that you are forced to choose the choice that they told you to make a few days ago. That now they've come and they demand you to make the choice. They say that this is what's happening. You have to choose to embody life or embody death, to wear the mask of life or the mask of death. Remember that the choice you make affects more than just your own fate. To don the mask of death is to embody death, and likewise, the mask of life gives life to those your heart seeks to protect. And so, I need to ask you, what do you choose? Do you want to live, or do you want to die? Do you want to wear the mask of life and embody life, or do you want to wear the mask of death? You can actually say, by the way, if you want. I'm going to show you both endings no matter what. You want to live. Ooh, okay. You want to wear the mask of life. You want to embody the golden mask of life. Then may you find peace in death, O errant heart. If you choose to wear the mask of life, then this is what happens. And the game ends. In order to actually keep going, you have to go back to the save point, and you have to choose to wear the mask of death. To wear the mask of death means embodying death and bringing death to those around you. But that's a choice that you have to make, and the game continues. If you choose this, all the cops around you die in agony, clutching their heads as comedy and tragedy look on. They disappear, and you're given the chance to continue. But things feel different again. It's not the same game anymore, and you don't really know how things have changed. But it feels as though there's forces beyond your control. You go back home, and you meet the little girl. And you go out, you get some tapes in a movie. This is a really fun section, actually. You go get some tapes in a movie. One of those tapes contains a level in the tape, which is really awesome. And in between some missions, you spend a lot of time talking with a little girl. And that's one scene I want to show. And you kind of protect her. You give her some food. You ask where her parents are, but she says that they're away and they don't speak to her. And so you take some time to be with her. She asks if you can get a cartoon, but you get an old war movie instead. And you learn more about what's happening. And at this point, you're starting to get a better understanding of the sort of person that you are. And where this understanding really comes in is in the next level. In this level, you have to go through a military base. It's a secret training facility for members of the Null program. That's people like you. And you go through this base, and you talk to a man named Leon. And Leon tells you how he was part of the program to create Nulls as the perfect soldiers to win the war. But the war wasn't won, and the Null program was a failure. He says that your existence is in error, and he refuses to give you any of the chronos that you need to survive. You enter the control room, and in this pod on the right is Leon being held in stasis. You open the pod, and his body falls out. He ages rapidly, and he crumbles into dust. You have a better understanding of who you are, but everyone who is involved with making you and enabling you to do what you do doesn't believe you deserve to exist. You go back home and you talk to the little girl again. She shows you a point in the on the rooftop that she wants to show you, the skyline of New Mecca. And she says that she wants to see all of the city one day. But you tell her that no, you won't show her all of it. You have to go somewhere else. And at this point, you have an understanding of the relationship between you, where she views you as like a father figure almost, but you know that she needs something better. She needs something better than this life, and someone better to support her than you. You're at the best an assassin, and at worst a serial killer, and you're part of this experimental government project where everyone involved wants you dead. It feels hopeless, but you still have to say something. Then there's one more combat level after this, and I have to show this fan art because it's really good. There's one more combat level after this. You fight the headhunter, and the headhunter, as you fight her, she explains what she's doing, why you're fighting. She isn't evil. She doesn't have like some evil plan or doesn't hate you personally. She's a null like you, and she also relies on Kronos. She just needs to survive. Her plan is to kill you and to take the Kronos from your blood. And that might sound brutal, but you've been doing everything you can to get Kronos too. She's just trying to survive, and you know that you've already fought 100 times, and there really isn't much of a difference between you. But you understand with all the people you've spoken to before and all the story you understand, you know how there's nothing else left. At the end of the fight, you defeat the headhunter, and her last words aren't saying how much she hates you or revealing her evil plan, but she crawls along the floor and she asks you to kill the ones who did this to us. You have to cut off her head and use it to open a retina scanner on a door. Inside is a scared woman and some children, and you just run away. Katana Zero does a really good job of giving this sense of hopelessness and emptiness at the end, where you understand how all your actions and everything that you've chosen and decided so far just feels empty now, and it feels like there was no point behind what you're doing. You're just killing people to stay alive, and it questions the meaning of everything that you're doing. After this mission, you go back to the psychiatrist / handler, and when you meet him, you kill him. Not with your sword, you beat him to death with your bare hands. You go back home, and you see a note. You can't find the little girl anywhere. You go out, you speak to some cops and the landlady investigating the crime scene. They say, there are no little girls here, not in the 3rd district. You feel the sense of hopelessness and emptiness behind everything that you were doing. And I think that Katana Zero shows really well the relationship between like the story and the gameplay in doing this. You've had to make choices. You had to cut off the headhunter's head and use it to open a retina scanner. You've had to do these actions in the past. You understand what this world is like. But going down this path and experiencing this story contextualizes everything you're doing and makes it feel hopeless and empty. There's no combat after this part of the game. It's only story. But you have some more important revelations. There's one more big one that I have to talk about. You finally remember your dreams. In the dreams, there are 2 little children inside, playing with a ball. A scientist comes in and warns them of null soldiers approaching. A mysterious figure who you couldn't identify before comes in, shoots everyone in the building, and uses a computer. And then at the end of the game, you realize that the dreams were of your own actions at the end. It was you all along, and it ends with such a sense of hopelessness and emptiness, and it's really good. It's such a good game because it uses the story and the way the story interacts with the narrative to give this feeling of emptiness and hopelessness developing, and it gives a sense that you don't have the ability to change what's happening to you or to do anything, and I think the way that the game has you interact with the story and has it interact with the mechanics, and the main story largely like you mostly can't change, gives so much meaning and context to what it is, and also has some secondary story elements, which are things that you can. They don't change the main story too much, but you can kind of change. You can have a Yu-Gi-Oh card battle in this game. It's really good. Uh, um, it. I don't know. I've played the game on speedrun mode. I've played it where it's just the combat, just the gameplay. And Katana Zero obviously isn't the first game or the only game that contextualizes what it's doing with the narrative. But for me, it's what made me realize how important it is to give a story to understand what you're doing and how that can give so much meaning to the actions that you're taking. If anyone has any questions or anything you want to ask about, then yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, you said like you could play you can do a UU battle like in the game.
You
I don't
can. You
remember
can.
that.
If with the receptionist, if you do the right like dialogue choices with the receptionist, you can have you can say,
Oh,
I can't show you my ID card, but I can show you my trap card, and you have a Yu-Gi-Oh battle. It's so good.
I completely forgot about that. Okay.
And yeah, you should play Katana Zero. It's such a good game. I kind of spoiled the whole thing, but there's a lot I didn't talk about. There's so many good moments.
I kind of have a question about comedy and tragedy.
Oh
Like,
yeah, go ahead.
did you feel like because I remember like from what I could remember, it was the only paranormal element in the game. I can't remember exactly. I played it many years ago. Like, do you think it still fits to like the setting of the game? Like, it wasn't like out of nowhere.
Um, I think that comedy and tragedy. I don't know if they're metaphorical because there's like um in the battle scene at the end of the Chinatown level, there's like the troops can clearly see like see them and interact with them. So I feel like they're real in some way, but I don't really know. They're definitely like paranormal also. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because like at the time I felt like it was just the only paranormal element in the game, and I wasn't really sure how to feel about it. I just felt like they introduced comedy and tragedy just so they can do this twist. That's how
Oh
I
yeah,
felt
I get what
about
you
it.
mean. I don't know. I like the way that comedy and tragedy kind of contextualize your life almost and what you're doing. Because they I don't know, they kind of more directly force you to think about the choices that you're making in your life and things like that. Um and I don't know, I like the sort of context they provide.
Right, right. Well, if no one has anything to say, I'm gonna say this. I've said this before. I'll say it again. If you like Katana Zero, play Hotline Miami 1 and 2.
Yeah, I can actually totally second that. Hotline Miami is a lot like Katana Zero.
It inspired it.
Yeah,
Two, play two too. Don't sleep on two.
yeah, Hotline Miami 2 is underrated. You gotta play that too. Anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again for inviting me. I am so glad to present, and I want to bring new revelations. And like I will do, we have many cliches, but like I will do, I will also talk just a bit about science. So this is the short, truthful detail in 2 cycles. It's the question that has haunted me for years. I'm using the same slide every time, and It's why have I not made a game? Every time it boggles my mind. How have I not reached that point after years, after so much time? They keep saying you need 10,000 hours to become a master. I have a lot more than 10,000 hours, I think. And this beach at the end of Rooftop Cop, somehow, after so many cycles of these weird mini games, there's just this beach. You have to, keep going forward, you have to get back to this beach. And it completely, again, completely stopped me. It is my cliche. It is completely my cliche. And this is still my favorite image, but it's true. And it's slightly wrong because I don't fully get it. I even remember in Pres Night 3, I was answering Cassian's and Jason's questions. I don't fully get it. I can see the details, and I've gotten a sort of more grasp of what I really like, and I like the stuff I can really attach to. Somehow these little things that I can attach to have so much story and really jump out at us. So there's something about like a story, and there's something about really jumping out and really sticking out to me. And I've always been trying to see, and I think I'm referencing past things of there's cycles, and I can see the cycles, and I can see how the needs of the game can push us to understand different things. But where is the attachments? Where are these little details in this bigger understanding? And it's, again, from a past presentation, but gramophones, like, why do I like these singing gramophones in the middle of a multiplayer PvPvE game? I just don't get it. Or do I? Let's get back to that. So I was thinking of games to use, and I was thinking of talking about 77 Lifespan. It's not by a big game studio, it's just by one itch user. And each day, you try to go further and further to see if your character reaches 0 for their day total. And that on the top left is the day count. And it looks horrible. And somehow, every day, when I see if I reached 0 on the day count, my heart slightly jumps. I feel a slight rhythm. Something is not right. And I know that it's coming. And somehow this cycle of going and going, I'm wondering, it keeps happening. You can look and you can find out that the day results, it chooses a random number from 0 to 77. And if it's 0, you die. It happens around the 77 mark. And it is a moment also, just like the beach, engraved in my head. You're full of life. You're continuing. You're going. You're continuing through the cycle. And then a sound effect, a single sound effect booming through my head. Your character dies completely right there at the spot. And it is just something that I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop writing about. It's everywhere in my notebooks. Why this sound? Why does this sound perpetuate throughout me, throughout everything I've done? And I see now, I've been reading books and I've been thinking back to everything. I've been looking back through all notes, through anything I've read, and I think we need to acknowledge that's just a beach. It's just, what was before was just a 16 by 16 pixel character. That is just a bunch of bars, some cropped pictures together, and one sound effect. It's all just plain normal stuff. But it's us that make the story. It's like on the right-hand side there, Dr. Robert Ford from Westworld says, we don't go to stories to see who we are. We see who we might be or who we might become. And I started thinking maybe that's the sort of sort of what this is getting at. It's like we know what we are, but this is showing sort of the continuation of what happens forward. And the book on the left, written, it was something that I was really thinking about, where it's a book about writers. It's a book about people who have written books, not who write books or are wanting to write a book. It's people who have written books. And I was thinking, okay, what if I want to have designed a game? What do I do? And it talks about building habits. And it talks about all the stuff at Atomic Habits. And a big theme is we are who we repeat. It's the cycles. It's the cycles. It's the cycles. But it does go back and ask you to reflect, ask you to really look back and start to notice. That is the most powerful thing. Written, there's thousands of books that talk about habits, but written, for me, really highlighted, we need to go back and spot and notice. And I see that so much because it asks you to see the truth of it. When we are thinking about how we design our games, what our game designer story is, what it has come to, it's so full of a cycle. It's so full of perpetuated ideas, of perpetuated mistakes, of perpetuated, you know what, I'm pretty busy this weekend. And just as an exercise, let's just close our eyes and think about our past games for like 30 seconds. Go. So, welcome back. It was pretty short. I don't know how far you've gone. Maybe I didn't give you enough. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you thought that was too quick. Great. Wonderful. After this, sit down, think about it, really look back. Because I've had a lot of time. I've had a lot of time looking through what my stuff is. This is some of my itch games. And looking back, I can see so many very clear, you try to push away past ideas, past whatever I thought about this game, whatever I thought during that postmortem. My adventure game, Find Edith, man, I just realized I was so anti-change. I thought it had to be this way. Why, as a game designer, will not push forward to this way? And I'm now so excited about the opportunity. What if I got to change that? It's just like what I said of decisions for the whole game. There was this other game where I had for Rolling for Failure, but I was just too tired to make a YouTube video about that. An open world, well, it's an open world game. I thought it had to be an open world game, that's it. And now I'm thinking, oh, I could have experimented that. I could have done something with that. And I think environments, cycles, and breaks and cycles are what push us to the truth. This written book talks so much about what are environments and what they cue for us to do. If you have, a computer where it's what you can in 1 second go to YouTube, you probably in 1 second will go to YouTube. If you had absolutely nothing but Godot, you'd probably start making a Godot game. And maybe, whoa, wait a sec, what if games are like environments? They have their own little triggers to get us into cycles, but they have the breaks to get us out, to get us to really think, to get us to really contextualize in a new way. And now, finally, before I was spotting some of this, but now I can see everywhere. Katana Zero, like John was saying, so many cycles over and over. Even in the rhythm games that were discussed by Andy, or sort of Spider-Man or Nuclear Throne. Nuclear Throne has way too many of these, of you are continuously going through in a cycle, and something will change the story, will change how you perceive yourself and the game. And that's the epitome of what Dr. Ford from Westworld was saying. It's not who we are, it's who we could become. And here's the detail. 77 lifespan does not exist. I made it, and I'm making it, and I just, I'm in the process of finishing it. But it's a story, isn't it? And here's your detail. And I want to reflect on the games and the cycles of us. We are so focused on the game, on what the game is, on what the attachment of the game is. What about our cycles? What about our actions? Why have we not made a game? It's not that we don't understand games. I have seen all of you. I have seen how you talk about games. I've seen how you can show time and time again the amazing things that make it work, the amazing things that break you. Well, how about we reflect on us? How about we reflect on what we do? And that's what I want to try in the maze. For the maze, I was thinking, let's keep it explorative. Let's go. No, screw that. I want to make the maze in 3 months. Let's learn something. Let's figure out, maybe take breaks in between, be like, hey, what's working? What's not working? Let's make it finished and make an environment. Maybe we can together create the triggers to keep us in a cycle, to be reflective, to critically think, like GDYU talk is giving me a chance to say this. That's what I think. And here's the short, truthful detail in 2 cycles. The answers have always been there. We have always had these answers. In all of my previous presentations, I've had such similar, obvious things about the breaks and cycles. But why have I not made a game? I am in this sentence. It is I. I have been focusing on the game. I have not been focusing on what cycles I am going through, what cycles I'm perpetuating. This beach, yeah, it's a shock that forced me to stop. I completely just stopped, broke out of the cycle, and I started realizing, what is this? What's going on? I get it now. I get why a beach with sticks, and again, it's a beach with sticks. It's something so abstract, so random. And look at it again. It is the science. It is why my science teacher said that science is almost like video games. You got to see what possibilities there are, and you got to pick the right one and go through. What doesn't work, you keep going. It's a cycle. It keeps going. The gramophones, I see it over and over, and 77 lifespan. It's something that has completely stuck in my mind, and I can't stop thinking about this game, and I've come to appreciate that I want to make this, and I want to make it happen. And again, it's just a beach. We have the option, the choice to look back, like Written says, to look back and embrace this, embrace what we can do. We don't have to keep trapping ourselves and being like, oh, this itch.io user is so mythical. Oh, if only we could ever reach the heights of Vlambeer, of this developer, but we can. I have seen us. I have seen what we can do. And it's not about who we are, it's about who we become. It's about us coming together, deciding that we can together help each other and make incredible things. So let's take 30 seconds to just reflect, shall we? Think about your games. Think about what has stopped your games. Why have you not made games? What cycles are you in? And I know it's uncomfortable. I know the breaks can be uncomfortable. You're going through combat and suddenly something breaks up. Something pushes you out. Why does this happen? But it's those things that can let you off. I've been saying the same thing over and over. It's been there. The answer has always been there. Yeah, I just need to change. I need to embrace that Find Idith did not have to be in this particular castle. I was just so dead set on that. And the thing I loved most in Find Idith was my boss fight. I originally had a boss fight, which was just one big monster, and then I changed it, and it is my favorite feature. And yet, I can't look back and realize, oh, why am I not so receptive to change in my game? But that's just on me. I'm curious what you do of your change. And again, for written, it's about habits, but we notice that we are in difficult environments. There's work, there's other stuff, everything comes back to us. But we can, with what we have available, choose to reflect, choose to think about what cycles there are, and seek help from others so that we can together progress forward. It's about environments, cycles, and breaks and cycles. And I made 77 lifespan. I am the itch user. I may not be the legendary itch user, but when you talk with people who are legends, when you talk with people who have accomplished incredible things, most of the time it's kind of just like, yeah, their environments have shaped them, critical events have shaped them. It's about them finding the opportunity and going for it. I get it now. Thank you, GDYU. I am so happy because I could see now the two cycles that exist. I've been focusing so much on the game cycles, and now I want to focus a lot on our cycles, and I want to experiment with the maze. I want to make this game. And that maze photo has a picture of our ideas from presentation 2. And I've told John way too many times, presentation night 2 was the highlight of my 2023, unironically, the highlight. Because right then and there, I didn't really care about the game. I cared about us really creating that moment, creating that atmosphere of going forward, of making incredible things. It was such a break. The maze is back. We are back. We choose the stories we tell. Thank you. That's
Yo.
Wow. Incredible, as always.
Oh, I forgot to say, I would love to take questions, but also anytime you have any question, please email me anytime. Email or message me.
This is a presentation about video game genres. I know it's pretty vague, but trust me on this, okay? So, I kind of want to go. Wait, actually, I want to talk about like how we define video game genres, and like actually in the very beginning, I want to like talk about why we even categorize as like human beings in general, like and like what, like how we can like see video game genres, how they evolve, and like some of the problems that they might have with the naming conventions and whatnot. Okay, so in general, I'm going like really like basic common sense shit right now. But why do we as human beings like even categorize? So organizations, like we have all this information, all this data, and we have to like organize all this stuff so we can be efficient with the information. And not just that, but we're able to make assumptions, like predictions over the, like for example, actually I'll give a few examples in a bit. Like, and we can like better communicate in general based on these like categories that we make and make better decisions based on them. Okay, for example, we have vegetables and fruits. There are reasons why we made these categories. Like these categories were made based on the characteristics of each one, right? So let's say I want something with like vitamin C, vitamin D, right? Where do I go? And like I want something sweet. Okay, I'll go with fruits. So here I am in the fruit category, right? So I have an apple and an orange. I'm sitting here like, okay, you know what? I think I want something a bit sour. So I go for orange. And then here I am, the citric fruit section. And like, you see what I'm doing here? Like what we do, we basically categorize all these things that are similar to each other. So the citric food, I mean, I don't need to like tell you like orange and lemons are citric. And like in this situation, let's say I pick oranges again. And what we can tell from this like categorizing, someone who likes oranges can like lemons and vice versa. So what does this mean? Like what does categorization means for entertainment in general? So for entertainment, let's say with movies and just like other mediums in general, like let's say manga too, we define the genre based on the setting and the story that it's trying to tell. So let's say what's like a common example? Iron Man is a comic book action movie, right? Pretty self-explanatory. And if I want more things like Iron Man, I will seek comic book movies that are, you know, action comic book movies. That's what I mean. And like, you know, just like various examples, like, you know, like here I have like a bunch of manga, like with various like examples. We have like Kingdom, which is a battle shonen, which is like about like the history, like historical war of China. Actually, I'm not too familiar with it, but like and like we have like another end of the spectrum. We have One Piece, an adventure of a young boy just like going around, just like becoming the pirate king, and just like you get my drift, right? So like in conclusion, I want you to like think about like we use like settings and stories to like categorize, you know, usually like movies and other mediums. But with games, it's different. See, with games, the setting and story that they're telling doesn't really matter most of the time. Like, for example, Borderlands 2 and Destiny 2, right? Borderlands 2 is a game that takes place in a post apocalyptic wasteland. Destiny 2 is a game that takes place in a fantasy sci fi setting. But both of them are considered looter shooters. And if you don't know what looter shooters are, well, as the description says, shooters where first person shooters where the focus is getting loot. And usually these shooters, actually not usually, almost all the time, these shooters usually have RPG mechanics, role playing mechanics, stats, and whatnot. So you can just like add variety to the gameplay just to like, because, you know, games just really like to focus on the freedom of choice. And the looter shooter RPG mechanics seem to be the most suitable. Now, there is an exception to the rule. I said just now, like, the setting doesn't matter, and like the story they're trying to say, but the horror games are different. And I've tried thinking about like, well, horror games, it's like, you know, I don't really need to tell you like how you feel when you watch like a horror movie or play a horror game, right? But it is essential to categorize it because horror horror gives you such a strong emotion that it does affect the gameplay, whether it be narratively or just the way the game is designed. I mean. So yeah, just something to just take into consideration. Okay, I'm just gonna show a quick overview of some genres. I'm not gonna go over most of them, but yeah. I'm gonna just like stay here for a bit. I don't know if you can like you guys can tell like the numbers exactly. Can you see? So like I'm not gonna go over them too much, but like there's a fuck ton of genres and with even more subgenres for each one. And I kind of did want to like go over like a lot of them, but if I do that, like I would be presenting for a very long time. This is from a website called withglitchwave.com. Very cool website. You can go check out like the genres and like whatnot, like just like it's a great website that shows the genre evolution. Actually, I should have had a picture just showcasing this, but I'll probably show it like after the presentation if you guys want. All right. Now, why are subgenres important? Subgenres are important because sometimes the label, in this example, the label role-playing game and RPG. Oh my god, that's Final Fantasy Tactics? Fuck. That's Fallout 1. Sorry about that. So sometimes the label isn't enough to tell you what the game's actually like. So in this example, the old example was Final Fantasy Tactics, but I changed it to Fallout 1. Sorry about that. This is a turn-based role-playing game. Plays very differently from Dark Souls 1, which is an action role-playing game. One is not at all reliant on your reflexes. It's more so reliant on your strategy, your understanding of the game mechanics. Now, although Dark Souls 1 does require you to be strategic and understand the game mechanics to some extent, more so the reflexes are what matter most in the game. And here's another example. Oh yeah, as I forgot to say, just because one likes the other doesn't like just because one likes Fallout 1 doesn't mean they're gonna like Dark Souls 1. And they might, but not necessarily. And in this example, Classic Doom and Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Classic Doom is what is now called as a boomer shooter, a game where the main focus is strafing around to avoid projectiles, going in very high speeds, and just trying to find keys to like access different areas in the map to eventually just beat the level. Whereas Call of Duty 4 is a more Modern Warfare, like is a more cinematic, like it compared to Doom, it's much more cinematic. It's a boots on the ground military game, like military shooter. Like it's more like it's not as arcadey as Doom. It tries to be more realistic as it and like tries to be arcadey as well. It's not a full on like realistic simulation of like war. But just because someone who likes Doom, who enjoys strafing around, enjoys Doom, doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna like the more realistic approach to Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. This is a very badly made picture I made in Paint. I'm not gonna get any graphic design awards for this, but this is how I just wanted to like visualize how I see genres. I see genres as like in this case umbrellas. I'm trying to like visualize an umbrella here. So in this case, role-playing game, and below it is action role-playing game. And then below that, there's even more subcategories. There is Souls-like, and then next to it is looter shooter. On the left is like just like whatever other things RPG would have. Oh, okay, I misspelled that. Like I see image stuff here. I meant to write imagine stuff here. You know, please ignore that. Okay. So, oh crap, might as well. So you must be wondering, like, do genres matter for game developers and just gamers in general? Well, yeah. Like, just like I said earlier, organized information, classification reasons, and and it helps people decide what they want and look for similar things to it. Like for example, on the right here, if someone likes Mario, they might like Celeste, so they'll go for that. And it also, in the sense of game developers, it helps them find a target audience. Like for instance, the developers of Celeste probably were hoping that fans of platformers such as Mario would be interested in Celeste. And they made sure that there was a target audience that would go and buy their game and be interested in their game. I guess yeah, communication, discussion, innovation, evolution. It makes it easier to talk about certain games, like, you know, just like I said, Mario's a platformer, Celeste's a platformer. They would get compared by people on the internet, or whether like in real life, and it's a very interesting way to see the evolution of some genres. Like some genres take inspiration from genres similar to it. You'll see what I mean in a sec. So this is a page from a book called The Theory for Fun for Game Design. Now, in this scenario, like we're seeing, can you see my mouse? Well, in any instance, like we're seeing the evolution of top-down shooters, right? It starts with Space War, and like I'm not gonna go over like every single thing I see here, but eventually like they all diverge into different paths. Like there are these graphs that just like diverge into different paths. Like for example, on the top right, overhead roaming shooter just becomes a top-down. You know, I think it should be more. It's like a overhead roaming shooter can also mean top-down shooter, I assume, because Smash TV, Star Control, and it doesn't include in this example, but Hotline Miami would be part of this. And then below it, Raiden R-Type et al. The Martin Shmup. Like, oh, this all started from Space War. Just every single, like, other games tried to, like, innovate it, like, try to do something different. And eventually all these genres evolved and inspired each other. All these games inspired each other, I mean. And eventually we had to create these names, these genres, these umbrellas we had to put each game in. And on the bottom, isometrics, like bloom accent. Oh, okay. This is a dead genre. Isometric shooters. It's probably like NES type games, like back in the day. I'm not very familiar with them, so I'm not going to focus much on them. But Zaxxon, in this passage, I remember like there was like a paragraph, like there was some text involved with this page. I should have included that. My bad. But it kind of explains how Zaxxon also had like an influence to eventually for game developers to be able to do 3D shooters, which, you know, we all play to some extent. Oh, and I wanted to show you that I spilled water on this after reading this. I didn't need to fucking include this part, but I just wanted you to like judge me. Sorry about that. Okay. So as I was going on about the evolution of game genres, unfortunately, because of it, some game genres end up dying. Like for instance, run and gun, shoot 'em ups, rail shoot. Okay, wait. Actually, let me explain something else. So I need to explain what I mean by a dead genre. So when I say dead genre, I don't mean a genre that doesn't get games made anymore. What I mean is it's a genre that in the past had a lot of success, had a lot of game developers make games for it, but now the amount of games being made for the genre and the amount of fans for the genre have decreased substantially. Now, don't get me wrong, there are fans for these genres, but they're not growing. Like the fan bases for these genres are not growing. They're not getting any new people interested in these genres. Now, for instance, run and gun, shoot 'em ups, rail shooters, MMO social games, real-time strategy, text-based adventures, and it's a hot take to say this, MMORPGs. I'm gonna explain all my points here like in a bit. Just you wait. So, as you can see here, I'm using shoot 'em ups here as an example, but this includes any type of 2D shooter, like back in the past, like or back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Like, eventually, this genre that was once huge and had all the developers making it got replaced by first-person shooters, third-person shooters of all sorts of kinds. You know, mostly because, well, it's more engaging to the player in some sense. Don't get me wrong; these games are still very fun. It's just that the more complex a game gets, it seems to attract more players, as it was with like 3D shooters. In this case, a first-person shooter, Call of Duty Mobile. On the left, I have Ikaruga. Sorry, Ikaruga, you're a great game, I'm sure, but unfortunately, not as many people are into shmups or bullet hells in this example. Is it necessary for some genres to die for gaming to evolve? I've never played Club Penguin, but I've heard a lot about it. Like Club Penguin, Habbo Hotel, and other like social MMOs like that. They're unfortunately a thing of the past, and they got replaced mostly by games such as Roblox. I don't know how many other games are there like Roblox that have. I'm not too sure, but I use Roblox as an example because for me, I theorize that Roblox, and its more likely less successful contemporaries, they've led to the death of social games like Club Penguin to die. Because eventually, a game like Roblox, which is very heavily user generated and has arguably so much more to do in the game, just replaced it. Like, there was just so much more to do, so it was a lot more complicated. Eventually replaced Club Penguin, because Club Penguin, unfortunately, is very simple compared to Roblox. Then again, I haven't played Club Penguin. I'm in no ways like trying to like say like it's a bad game, but like mathematically, like the mathematical system behind it, it just wasn't as complex. Also, just so you know, oh crap. Just so you know, I can't see any of the the chat. Like if there's anything like you want to like tell me like or like say like just like open up VC, I'm not gonna mind. Oh yeah, hot take time. So I don't know how many. So back in the 2000s or in late 90s, MMORPGs were like the big thing, the big social thing. It is what we now would consider like the most equivalent to live service games. Unfortunately, as time went on, and people and the internet got bigger, the usage of video game guides became bigger, and the community aspect in World of Warcraft, where you could, it was all about building a community and you could all help each other, like go through quest lines, do raids and everything else. That sense kind of dwindled. And of course, with the rise of social media, like the community aspects start falling over like on social media more so than an actual in-game. Now, the reason why I say games like Fortnite and other live service games have replaced MMORPGs is because they are this generation's World of Warcraft. They're very different, but they are this generation's World of Warcraft. Like, Generation Alpha, the Gen Z. Now, as to what choices Fortnite has been making over the years, I'm not as familiar with. But from what I can tell, Epic knows what they're doing, because if they didn't, Fortnite wouldn't be so huge still. I still see live service games such as Fortnite, and what other examples are there? I can't really think of any right now, but like Fortnite, I guess Roblox, yeah. Roblox fits in this category as well, the community aspect. But I just like included Roblox like earlier just to show like social games like Club Penguin, but like Fortnite is definitely like Fortnite and Roblox are definitely the generation's World of Warcraft. Okay, now real-time strategy. I don't know how many people here have played a real-time strategy game, such as like StarCraft, Command and Conquer. But essentially, you are building a base and controlling an army in real time. Now, I think, and back then, back in the day, the 2000s, late 90s, this was a massive genre. RTS games would be made all the time. And back in the day, like Command and Conquer, StarCraft, Warcraft 3. I should have included these examples in the pictures, but I just didn't know how. Warcraft 3. What else was there? Oh, Age of Empires. Those were the big hitters back in the day. Everyone played them. Everyone loved them. But like there were a lot of other ones that were very popular as well, but didn't have the same popularity as those, like the ones I mentioned earlier. But what happened? What exactly happened that this genre that was so dominant, like just like disappeared? Like it's just there are like barely any games being made for it, and it's definitely not getting any more fans, because I haven't met a single person, like I haven't met anyone that isn't old, like pretty old, that has played real-time strategies. Now this is my theory, at least to what happened. I wouldn't say like there was a genre that replaced it by being more complex, but there are genres that replace it by being very similar to it. For example, MOBAs and grand strategy and 4X games. If you don't know what a 4X game is, it's 4X stands for exterminates. Wait. I'm sorry. Let me just look it up real quick. Exterminate something. Crap. Oh yeah, explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. It is a subgenre of strategy, like grand strategy, real-time strategy. No, not real-time strategy, grand strategy mostly. Essentially, you explore, explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. It's games like Civilization, Total War, and in some senses, a lot of grand strategy games. So as I was saying, MOBAs, interestingly, started out for Dota 1 was a mod for StarCraft 1, I believe, or either StarCraft 1 or Warcraft 1. And what happened was, it was a game where instead of controlling an entire army, you control one character with a bunch of abilities, and it had some tower defense elements, but it was mostly just you controlling one character, and like you worked with other people as a team to defeat the other side. Like in League of Legends, it's called Summoner's Rift. I don't know what it's called in Dota. Eventually, this game got popular and more popular, and just ended up replacing the real-time aspect of StarCraft. Like it just like scratched that need to people. Like for the current generation. And Grand Strategy 4X games, these games are actually very huge. They have a massive amounts of following. They replaced the strategy aspect of real-time strategy. This is a very interesting case, although this is at least my theory. This isn't exactly like facts. These aren't facts per se, but this is what I theorize happened, like why real-time strategy died. And like right now, these two, mostly MOBAs are dominant. Grand strategy is pretty big. But yeah, let me just move on to my next point because I talked about this a bit too much. Okay. So I want to talk about the problems of some game genre names. Some of them are just vague. Some of them require, like folks say, look, I'll talk more, I'll give examples in a bit, but just like hear me out a bit. Some of them need pre-required knowledge of what you're talking about. And because this is something people just never know what to expect from a certain genre, like it can be difficult to explain to someone, or it can be difficult to you what to expect from a genre unless you've tried it out or like played it before. This can also cause problems for game developers if they're trying to create something new and they're struggling to explain it to someone who isn't very familiar with it. And on the topic of you need some required knowledge of what you're talking about, let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried talking, we're just like talking about games with someone, and then let's say you were talking about Spelunky, right? And then they're like, oh, what kind of game is that? And you're like, roguelike. And they look at you like this. Yeah. Many such cases, unfortunately. Many such cases. This is kind of the point I'm trying to make. Okay. Let's talk about the term MOBA. Okay, I should have written it here, but MOBA stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. Now, you must be wondering, what does that even mean? Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. So I guess it's a battle arena that you battle in. It's multiplayer and online. I don't really get what the multiplayer or online like are for. I guess the reason it exists is people had to come up with a term to describe Dota 1 when people didn't know what to call it. And they had to come up with a better term than saying, oh, it's like Dota when League of Legends came out. I think if you've never played a MOBA, you might struggle to understand what the genre is. But the thing is, the reason why these games are so popular is, one, they're free to play. Two, you probably played it because your friends were playing it. And that's usually how it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And you'll see, like most people don't really care about genre names. All they care about is like fun. But it can get difficult when you like try and explain to someone what the game is and they have no context. Okay, this might be a bit of a hot take, but personally, I don't. Okay, let me first explain what an immersive sim is supposed to be. So an immersive sim is essentially a game that is very meticulously designed in a way that they give you so many choices that you can solve a problem in any other way. And sometimes the choices that you make weren't intended by the game developers. There's a lot of like the way it's designed, the games are designed, you can go back to older areas and find new things. Now, the term immersive sim came about. Wait, I should have shown this when I was explaining what it was. The term immersive sim was coined by on the right, you see his picture, Warren Spector. He's a man who was involved in a lot of so-called immersive sims, such as System Shock, Thief, and he directed Deus Ex 1, the game on the left. If you're not familiar with Deus Ex 1, like I said, if I say it's an immersive sim, it's difficult to describe, but I'd argue it's a lot better to just say it's a first-person RPG, because people would understand more people understand what it is. And even on, like, with the case of Deus Ex on the left, it was pretty successful when it came out. But with Prey on the right, in case you don't know what Prey is, it's a game where you're stuck in space. You pretty much have the same gameplay characteristics as the Deus Ex 1. The whole lot of choice, lot of freedom. You're stuck in space. You have to deal with aliens that have invaded the space station you're in. And the game didn't do very well commercially. Why did it not do well commercially? Because here's a point I'm trying to make. People didn't really understand what it was trying to be. And even though it was made by Arcane, but most of the people that were viewing it just thought it was going to be like a horror game, from what I remember back in 2017. And people, because of that, it wasn't very clear to players what it was, and it kind of just fell into obscurity because of it. But now, of course, don't get me wrong, it has its cult following status, but the facts remain that it didn't do very well commercially. But yeah. Now here we come to the term CRPG. What does CRPG mean? CRPG stands for Computer Role-Playing Game. The reason why this term emerged is back in the 80s, tabletop RPGs, which are still popular today. If you don't know what that is, it's games like D&D. And what other examples other than D&D? Oh yeah, Warhammer 40K. Those are, like, I would say, the most popular ones, I think, where you play games using character sheets and using a guide that someone called a DM, the Dungeon Master, uses to create a game just using everyone's imagination and just like, I guess, text through text. And back in the 80s, everyone wanted to just create a computer version of this. And that's what Ultima 1 wasn't the first CRPG, but it was one of the more popular ones. And on the right, I have Fallout 1, another example, a computer RPG. But the thing with the problem with this label is, nowadays, it literally just means computer RPG. So technically, Witcher 3 and Fallout, like games like Witcher 3, Cyberpunk, Fallout 4, they're still computer RPGs. Like, the only reason this coined was coined was because to differentiate between pen and paper RPGs and computer ones. But nowadays, it's used to describe games that are isometric and turn-based in nature. Like RPGs that are isometric and turn-based in nature. So in some ways, it's kind of lost its meaning, like, throughout time. And but it doesn't really matter in a sense, because some people, they get what you mean when you say CRPG, but it's kind of an interesting thing to, like, notice when you, like, describe it. Now so the problem with the term JRPG. So JRPG, in the classic sense, usually means you control a party, like a party of people, to go through an adventure together. And it has role-playing mechanics, like RPG mechanics. Wait. where you can modify the way your party members fight, whether it be like using their builds, and in some JRPGs you have like a lot of freedom of choice. Now, in defense of JRPGs, the way I see JRPGs is, even though you don't create your own character, the way I see it is you get given a character sheet, like a pre-made character for you to play, and just be given the choice to play. And then the game that you play is, in a way, like a D&D campaign that you go through with your party. That's at least the way I see JRPGs. Even if it doesn't have much of a player choice involved, like in, say, like when I say player choice, I mean story-wise. For example, Final Fantasy VII and Nier. Nier here especially, like, it doesn't really provide a lot of player choice, but especially when in the way you play the game. But I'm sorry. I still think it should be called an RPG just based on the definition I just gave it earlier. And Dark Souls 1, many people would say this is not a Japanese role-playing game, even though it is a role-playing game made in Japan. What they really mean is that it's not turn-based, and it's just an action RPG that's very different from what we consider a classic JRPG. That's really what it means. If it doesn't make sense, it kind of doesn't. But yeah, that's kind of the problem I want to point out here. Okay, and slide. The problem with the term RPG. To be honest, I think I should have started with this slide first, because I kind of realized midway I didn't explain what an RPG even was. So role-playing game. In the tabletop role-playing games, you have the freedom to role-play as a character and do and act whatever way you want and do decisions that fit to your character. You have the freedom of choosing your own choices. And you have a complex set of, like, you have a very open-ended way of building your character and just like giving it the skills that your character might need to fight against enemies and maybe handle social situations and whatnot. So the classic definition for a game is you have freedom of choice and you're able to gain abilities and raise your stats. This is a very vague term because when you really think about it, Grand Theft Auto 5 and Far Cry 3 have that too. But they're not RPGs. Right? That's at least not it's not an RPG in the traditional tabletop role-playing sense. So as time went on, like the term RPG is kind of, every game has started to have RPG elements, but that's basically saying games are giving you more freedom of choice and giving you abilities to unlock and stats to raise. That's basically what it means when people say, oh, this game has RPG mechanics. It's just the label they throw. It's kind of funny to just point out. But the name of this presentation is vague too, don't you think? This is a presentation about video game genres. Yeah, that's because it was intentional. Big brain moves right there. And then we have the like genres. The most common examples I could think of: Souls-like, Diablo-like, Rogue-like, Metroidvania. Now, I'm assuming a lot of you know what these terms mean, but I want you to think, what if you don't know what Dark Souls, Diablo, Rogue, and Metroidvania are? I mean, Metroid and Castlevania are. If you hear these terms, you'll just be like, what? You're just confused. In some sense, it's kind of a weird name for a genre. But then again, it's also because if we really have to give it an actual mechanical way of describing the genre, we would end up with stamina-based action RPG, isometric dungeon crawler action RPG, procedurally generated permadeath game, and with Metroidvania, I hear the term search actions is like what Japanese gamers call Metroidvanias. I'm not too sure. I saw like from a YouTube comment a long time ago. I might be wrong though. But what these genre names, the like genres, they're just a way to communicate to someone that, oh, it's like Dark Souls, oh, it's like Diablo, oh, it's like Rogue. And with Metroidvania, oh, it's a Metroid. It's like Metroid and Castlevania. Well, the ones that do have intricate, like, you see what I mean? It's kind of like funny. Like, either you have to like describe exactly the gameplay characteristics of what defines a genre to someone. When with like say a movie or like a manga, you're like, oh, it's like a comedy manga. Oh, it's like a sci-fi like post-apocalyptic manga, and that's it. You just be done with it. But for video games, we have to come up with these terms like the like genres and stuff. And I honestly wanted to talk more about this, although I don't know. It's been like a long time for me. I've been talking for a while. Like, you guys mind if I keep continuing or like what? Because I'm almost done. I can like rush it up if you guys want. I can't see the chat, by the way. You have to like speak. Right. Okay. I don't know. Sorry. Oh, you got spoilers there. Okay. I'm just gonna assume that you guys are still following. I'm just gonna talk. And so okay. So the thing is, when you're talking with someone who isn't a gamer, I really don't suggest saying it's a Souls-like or Diablo-like. Just say it's like the game Dark Souls or whatever. Just to avoid some confusion and just some weird looks. So the conclusions I want to give you from this presentation is just like categorizing everything, even with like ridiculous subgenre names. It's just part of our neurology. It's just something we have to do as human beings. And just like how we define how games genres are different from like the genres of other mediums, and just like a new way of like looking at like game genres and how they can be like created, and like how other genres have like evolved like genres similar to it. And even though and how they can just like get like vague and difficult to understand if you don't have context for them, and just like please don't take him seriously, like just like whatever. Like, don't take like game genres like the naming and like just the categorization thing seriously. You don't want to end up like the guy on the right. Roguelike road light. Yeah. Guess that's my presentation. Wait. Hang on. Forgot to show something. Why did I make this presentation? It's because I'm a nerd. That's why. All right. That should be it. Okay. I'm getting like silence. I'm not sure how everyone reacted to this.
Let's go!
That was great. It was great.
Okay. I did this in such a rush. I wanted the presentation isn't finished. It's just due. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about Bullet Heaven and Bullet Hell, but I kind of forgot. I was like making it in like 2 hours. Yeah, our work is never finished, Tigran. Oh my god. Hmm. I hope I was making sense though, because I was kind of I don't know how everyone was like uh how everyone like was following along.
Yeah, you kept saying that you couldn't read chat, but we kept just saying stuff in chat anyways.
Like what?
Oh, I was saying how you said you kept on saying that you can't read chat, but like we kept on like we just like typed in chat anyways.
Oh, nice, nice. Hmm. They didn't directly replace FPSs. They just in some ways because of like it kind of just like took the massive spot that shmups and just like shoot 'em ups like that like had in general like are now replaced. Like FPS just takes all that like attention now, just like shooters in general, third person shooters. That's what I meant, Jaden. All right, sorry, who was talking?
It's really great visitation. I'm curious. Is there any genre name? Like it seems like genre names seem to like push like an expectation and such. Is there any genre name you would want introduced?
A new genre name I want to introduce. Well, there is one, but it kind of has a technical name too. Have you ever heard a genre called blobber?
Blogger.
That sounds fake. No.
That isn't fake. That's actually real. Um, it's basically first-person grid-based RPGs, like the classic Shin Megami Tensei games and like Might and Magic. That's like the nickname people give it, blobber.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's like that genre. Yeah, I definitely didn't talk about everything I wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
DRPGs.
DRPGs.
They have they have that name too. What was DRPG again? Dungeon crawler RPGs?
Well, I think people just call them DRPGs.
Right, right. Blobber is more so like a slang, I suppose, for people who are really into them. I guess like a shorter version of saying it. Right. Yeah, it is a weird name, dungeon crawler, because like Diablo is a dungeon crawler and like so many other things. It's just like, yeah, like that's my point. You need a lot of context just to know what the hell people are talking about sometimes.